It's why why is that going up there? We don't want that up there. All right. Okay. So, before Milo Edwards comes on, we are just going to take a quick look at a few clips which happened after this disastrous by-election in the UK. I actually don't totally understand the intricacies of this electoral process. I'm sure Milo can help fill in some of these blanks for us. But here is Starmer after this disastrous election result. He's got to set the ship right. This is why they wanted to bring this guy in. This is why they wanted the adults back in the room. And so, it might have been a disappointing result, but let's hear out Keir Starmer, or Keith Starmer, on how they're going to respond to this result. Because this guy is serious, he's clinical, he's forensic. He's a serious man. Not like the previous leader. We don't even need to mention his name. So let's hear from Keith. Any moment now. And you hear from Keith Starmer any moment.
This is not a question of left or right. It's a question of whether we're facing the country. We have changed as a party, but we've not made a strong enough case to the country. We've lost that connection, that trust, and I intend to rebuild that and do whatever is necessary to rebuild that trust.
But what does change mean in
the important question?
Terms?
Let's hear this.
It means stopping as a party, quarrelling amongst ourselves, looking internally and facing the country and setting out that bold vision for a better Britain and changing the things that need
vision?
What is that?
Yeah. What is that vision?
That is the change that I will bring about.
Len McCluskey, Unite General Secretary, says people don't know what you stand for. What is that vision?
Yeah,
let's hear that. Our vision is of a country that ends the injustice and inequality that millions of people face every day. But fundamentally, we have to show that we are facing the country, that we've learnt the lessons of this bitterly disappointing set of results.
You say you take personal responsibility for the results. Are you up to the job of Labour Party leader?
Yes, and I intend not only to take responsibility for the results, but to take responsibility for fixing things. And I will set out what change is needed over the next few days, but I'm absolutely clear in my mind and absolutely determined to do whatever is necessary to fix things and to make sure we can make that case.
That sounds pretty good.
In a compelling way.
What are you going to change over the next few days? What are you referring to?
I will set out what we need to do to reconnect the Labour Party to the voters that have cast their verdict on us last night, particularly in places like Hartlepool. We have changed as a party. We have changed as a party, but we need to go further and we need to set out that strong case to the country. We have not done that.
So you're going to set out a new policy agenda, is that what you're saying?
I am going to set out a strong case to the country, learn the lessons of the elections that have come in so far, and accept that we must reconnect and rebuild trust with working people, particularly in places like Hartlepool.
Can you give us any indication of what it is you're going to be
I'm not going to set out a policy agenda in this interview, but I'm going to set out how we reconnect and rebuild that trust.
Man, you watch this, you see how much charisma this guy has, and it's like, how are they getting this bad result? Because clearly this is a guy who, I mean, listen, he's one of those people, he walks into the room, all eyes in the room, right on him. That's the level of charisma that's going on here. And so it's just a huge mystery that people aren't really responding to this. It's a huge mystery. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Rob Rousseau, that's me.
Thank you, Maxie, for the 2 months. Okay, that's actually not accurate, though, because that's actually me. So, I appreciate it. Thank you for the 2 months of Tier 1. You might want to check the facts on. You might want to fact check some of that. Some of the information that you're sharing. That was a typo. Okay, that's fine. Here is... Oh, no, okay, so... Okay. So if you just give me one moment, I'm going to send the Zoom invite to Milo. Computer audio. Invite link. Okay. I'm going to send this over to Milo. That was our little warm-up. Aperitif. Hors d'oeuvre, you might want to call it. So I sent the invite to Milo. We're going to talk to Milo Edwards of Trash Future in probably a few minutes. I'm just going to go back to where we just were. That really was quite an interview. So since this like huge meltdown, oh, this is a good picture. Good freeze frame. Oh, now I lost it. Since this shit happened, there's been all kinds of crazy stories and weird stuff coming out about the Labour Party and Starmer. I don't even know. I don't even want to get into it. I'm hoping like Milo's going to be able to break this down for us further. But this was only the bare scraping of the surface of the complete fucking meltdown that is happening with this party. Milo Edwards of being banned from Ukraine fame. That's an impressive feat too. You got to give it up for Milo on that. Let's zoom. Okay. All right. Being banned from Ukraine is quite based. It's true.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hey, Red Scary, thanks for gifting a sub to Carrier Wave. Poggers, I believe, is what we say there. Keeping my policies secret so the voters can have a nice surprise. That's right. That's the political masterminds that have been put back in charge, finally. Very exciting. So I'm in kind of like just waiting for Milo to show up. I know I told him I was kind of running a bit late, so he might be a few minutes away. I'm speculating. One of those dead air moments. Chat, you got to help me out here. What you fire some stuff off here? What are we talking about? Let's keep the conversation flowing. So when Milo shows up, we're all mentally, the synapses are firing. The conversational juices are flowing. The invite has to make its way across the Atlantic. Please have some patience. That's right. It goes in it's like a Morse code kind of a thing. One of those old school. I'm pretty sure that's how the technology works in England. You send the zoom invite and it's like and they have to like, I'm not sure how it works. I'm not an engineer. Are you more of where's he from? Are you talking about Milo? Milo's from the podcast Trash Future. Very good podcast based out of the UK. They were one of the, like, they were a bright spot in the UK throughout the Corbyn era, having their, because it truly was remarkable, that Jeremy Corbyn era, witnessing the media meltdown and the way that, like, the media establishment in the UK completely just went absolutely insane for 5 straight years. And, you know, it was a breath of fresh air to have, you know, the Trash Future gang out there kind of laughing at that and pointing out the ridiculousness of it. I mean, it was because it was just designed to make you feel fucking crazy. I can only imagine what it was like being there in the center of it, the eye of the hurricane. It was stunning for me just to like watch this play out over the 5 years or so of the Corbyn era. Truly, truly stunning and really, really instructive, I think. As, like, you know, instructive in the way that we can see how this, like, not just the right-wing media, because there's a huge right-wing media establishment in the UK, of course. I mean, that's basically what the media in the UK is. But even the sort of liberal media establishment, the lengths that elite liberals will go to sabotage, in both media and politics, to sabotage this, like, fairly mild social democracy. Like, it's not like Corbyn's this crazy radical or anything. He's radical compared to, like, the political tradition of the UK, but I mean, it's not like he was proposing anything that crazy. It's just a pretty, you know, a pretty significant upgrade to the social democracy with this strong sense of, like, anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism, of which criticizing the Israeli occupation of Gaza and the West Bank was part of that. And then you can see that's the fundamental reason why I think that became such an issue, because of the ways that these elite classes in both media and politics are kind of subservient to the state, the security state, you know, the military. That's ultimately what a lot of that came down to, the backlash. They went for Corbyn, then for Bernard, but I think it was, they significantly, like, it was, as crazy as it was seeing the media reaction to Bernie, and obviously it was crazy as well. I mean, we've watched plenty of that footage on the stream. I think it was even crazier with Corbyn. I think part of the reason was because Bernie was Jewish, and they can, even though Bernie's critical of Israel and critical of the occupation and has talked about, you know, like, leveraging aid to Israel based on, like, their compliance with international law and things like that. They couldn't really do the same thing of creating this crisis about anti-Semitism that was based predominantly in that. Even though they actually did try. But with Corbyn, that was like the centerpiece of it. And you saw as well, the more that they tried to, like, acknowledge that this was an issue and they were trying to show that they were serious about it, the more that was just used as more evidence, and nothing was ever, you know, really resolved. It was really, really instructive. And also, I think Corbyn's foreign policy stances were more forceful than Bernie's. Bernie's, like, has pretty good foreign policy stances, but Corbyn's were, like, what, on the next level. And that's the main thing that drives these outrage campaigns. Okay, I got Milo coming in. Here's Milo Edwards. In just one moment. Hello, Milo. Are you there? Milo, hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
How's it going?
It's going very well. Hang on one sec. Let me make sure that you're here. Oh, there you are. Yes. Very nice. I got it to work.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Okay, Milo. Well, welcome. Thanks for...
I sound okay. I should be coming through my Zoom recorder, hopefully.
Yeah, you sound fine. You having the snack there? What's the snack situation?
Yeah, I've been on the go all day. I'm eating some Tesco Finest double chocolate cookies.
Okay, very
I'm
nice.
packing a snack.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That's what's going on right here.
Sounds
Yeah,
great.
It's pretty decent. I've no complaints.
Cool.
I'm just gonna retweet your.
Oh yeah. Great. Well, thanks for joining us on the stream. The chat is popping off. Everyone's happy to see you. Very cool. Thanks for taking the time to help bring this down, all this stuff.
We'd love to have people popping off.
Yeah, that's the kind of vibe we have cultivated here.
Asking my opinion on hot pops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Tesco chocolate cookies. I remember when I was spending time in the UK, I really got into those M&S sandwiches, the Marks and Spencer. I quite like that.
Oh yeah, those are good. Generally speaking, anything from Marks and Spencer's is usually a pretty good shout. I tend to find actually because you've got your premium supermarkets like Waitrose and Marks and Spencer, they're generally a cut above, but of your sort of standard supermarkets, I tend to find actually, I mean, like we're a bit of a Tesco household, but I actually disagree. I'm a bit of a black sheep in that I think Sainsbury's is much better.
Okay, I see. Controversial.
Pound for pound, almost anything you buy in Sainsbury's is better than the Tesco equivalent. Yeah.
Interesting.
Particularly the baked goods section in Sainsbury's is excellent. Much better than the Tesco bakery section, which is poor in my view.
Yeah, well, the thing about Tesco though is you can say, I'm just going down to the bloody Tesco, innit? And it has a certain ring to it that's like kind of more satisfying in many ways. Sorry.
I saw an excellent London Vibes tweet. It was around the time when Old Town Road was big. And the tweet was, I'm going to take my car to the Old Kent Road. I'm going to drive to the big Tesco. And that is just what living in the UK is about.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, so, you're taking the time to explain, the current ongoing Labour Party meltdown, the result of the elections that took place. It was Friday, or has there been more?
Oh.
There's a whole ongoing process.
Best.
Yeah.
It was Thursday.
Okay, yeah.
In Britain, we love doing elections on Thursdays. I don't know why.
All right.
They get a discount or something, maybe.
Well, here's the main question. Here's the main question I have for you, Milo, which is this. Why would Jeremy Corbyn do this? Because I've seen some pretty disastrous results from the Labour Party in this election. It hasn't gone well. And I'm just wondering, what he has to say for himself. Has he responded to what's happened? And, why would he do this? This is what I don't understand.
Well, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn did this, I presume, not only because he wants the Labour Party to lose, as the left always do. They always want the soft left to lose.
That's right.
But also because it's part of some sort of grand master plan of his to make the government Hezbollah and launch some kind of pogrom. So I presume it's part of that plan. I'm not sure. He hasn't hooked me in on exactly what the steps are in that plan.
Okay. You're on the listserv.
He is, he's sitting on a throne made of his own brain, I presume, doing this right now. So
yeah. Unbelievable.
Jeremy's going to be back, folks. Don't worry about that. He's got a plan.
Yeah. It's like one of those movie villains where him losing in 2019, that was actually part of his whole plan, right? That was part of it. You thought he was losing and it was bad, but really that was his whole thing. His whole plan in the beginning. It was like the Joker in The Dark Knight.
Exactly. Yeah.
He was arrested
We're
on
all
purpose.
in Jeremy Corbyn's mind palace right now. I guess it's technically a mind allotment in his case, but nevertheless, some sort of mind structure.
I'm wondering, what in that movie The Cell, if you went into Corbyn's mind, what that would look like, and just a bunch of pleasant little jam making scenes, and cats running around. Okay, so here's what I do want to know, though. Jokes aside,
vegetables and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All jokes aside, it's been really kind of interesting and somewhat amusing to see this play out over the last few months. As after the 2019 election, they finally kind of got rid of Corbyn, the sort of centrist in the Labour Party establishment. Everyone was celebrating, and the thing that they were saying for months, anyone else would be 20 points ahead, all this stuff. Now it's their chance. They've got their guy. They've anointed their own guy. Now is the chance to show how everything that they've been saying is right and how they've been correct about all this stuff. And now that the adults are back in the room and all this kind of stuff that they all say, now we're going to see a different result. And it's been really amazing just over the last couple of days seeing that literally the opposite happen. And as usual with these kind of things, instead of like, any of these people maybe taking a look in the mirror and being like, maybe we were mistaken to believe some of this stuff. They're all doubling and tripling down, of course, on the exact same thing, blaming the left as usual, not taking any responsibility for what's happened. But it's been amazing to see them get everything that they want and really fall so flat on their face and still kind of be complaining about everyone else. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive. I mean, I think that it's easy with the Labour Party to A, get bogged down in talking about it in the first place, and B, get bogged down in the kind of the quagmire of into knee sign spats that are always going into it. I'm definitely not of the trash future guys. I'm definitely not the biggest Labour Party head in terms of keeping up to date with what's going on. But I mean, basically the sort of the long and the short of it for the international viewer, for the non UK viewer, Labour is basically having the kind of the same problem that the Democrats are having in the US, which is that now is the time of monsters. The old refuses to die, the new is struggling to be born. Everyone, like all the Labour Party establishment, are very unconcerned with winning elections and far more concerned with like losing them in the right way. Like they're all like huge careerist losers who are like incredibly obsessed with this sort of internal party hierarchy. And it's much easier to understand the things that happen with the Labour Party when you understand that. And that's why they hated Jeremy Corbyn so much, because like he basically just swanned in from like off in the wings and like shot to the top of the Labour Party career ladder, when like it's basically like the Labour Party is basically like a queue, and the longer you stand in the queue, the closer you get to the, being the leader or whatever. And Jeremy Corbyn sort of jumped the queue, or he was in like a kind of a different queue. So everyone was mad. They're like, hey, hang on a minute. I was supposed to be in the shadow cabinet because I've been a councillor and then an MP. And so now I get to be in the shadow cabinet, but now I can't be in the shadow cabinet because I have terrible politics. So everyone got very mad. And then now it's like they're like, okay, for the last 5 years it's just been like, we keep losing because of Jiminy Crobbins, because of Jermoy Crobney. If it wasn't for him, everyone would be voting Labour. We'd be 20 points ahead. This was the big running theme, was everyone kept saying, we're going to be any other leader, we'd be 20 points ahead. And it's like, okay, well, let's fucking find out. So in 2017, Corbyn was actually a decent few points ahead. I can't remember quite how much, but he was like 5 to 10 points ahead. They went on to get they gained seats in the 2017 election, which is the first time Labour had gained seats, I think, since 1997. Basically, Labour got a huge majority in 97. That was Blair's first victory. And then since then, the party has been in decline, essentially. Like they won the elections in 2001 or 2002. They won again in 2005, and they lost in 2010. But each of those elections, they lost seats. Anyway, so basically, what you have to understand, I think, about the Labour Party really is that the Labour Party has been doing almost continually worse since 1997. There's like a long period decline, and then you've got like the kind of short-term different things that are going on. So under Corbyn, you had this brief boost sort of in 2017. I mean, like, I'm not the kind of leftist, so I'm going to sit here and gas up Corbyn. I mean, like, Corbyn was not exactly a great leader in the sense that, like, I think Corbyn lacked the sort of Bernie Sanders ability to kind of like go in and control the room and get his point across. Like, politics, he's a nice old man, which made it all the funnier when they were trying to portray him as like this cool guy who, like,
wants to
Rob to ban Jewish people from the UK.
Boy, I blame Jeremy Crumble Minute.
Again, there have been problems with anti-Semitism on the left. Like, it's a real thing. It needs addressing, but like the way in which it was brought up was just completely insane. It was, I mean, just absolutely deranged, and did nothing, unfortunately, to further any kind of fight against anti-Semitism.
Well, it just ended up enabling the right.
So now then it's like, right, finally, we've got rid of Well, exactly, yeah. And now we've got the Conservatives in power who will never do anything anti-Semitic or
Of course,
put
no.
themselves in league with anyone anti-Semitic.
Absolutely not.
They would never do that. They absolutely would never do that. No. Anyway, and so then you find yourselves in a situation like, so Corbyn lost the election in 2019, he steps down, and then there's a leadership election. All of the candidates are bad. You had Keir Starmer, who is the kind of was obviously going to win from the start. Then you had Rebecca Long Bailey, who was kind of a Corbyn continuity candidate, politically speaking, but just no personality whatsoever, and also like not like hugely well liked in the party, like was never going anywhere. There were a few others that were like basically joke candidates. It was more or less between Starmer and Long Bailey. The left were kind of behind Long Bailey, but even if she'd won, I think it would have been like another Corbyn situation where like she just wouldn't have been charismatic enough to like carry it over.
And in like an even more precarious position with less
Starmer
seniority and less experience to confront that, you know?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think, and this is something that's been borne out with Starmer as well, is that like, I mean, Corbyn, despite being uncharismatic, at the very least did have a kind of courage of his convictions type thing where he came across very well to certain demographics who were like, okay, this guy is clearly being very honest and very earnestly believes the things that he's saying, which I think it's fair to say one of his plus points.
Yeah.
But what he was very bad at was handling the press and kind of controlling an interview. So then Starmer, when he won on this platform of like very similar politics to, it was almost Corbyn continuity as a platform. And he's kind of gone rightwards since then, which we did expect. But I think what none of us expected, Riley and I were talking about this the other day, is how we assumed that the kind of the Starmer administration was going to be like, okay, to the right of the Corbyn one, but more competent. We assumed it was going to be like slick, back to the kind of Blair and Campbell days of like, you know, it all makes sense. They've all got to unlock what they've got to say in the interviews. They're like going at the government about stuff. Absolutely, that is the last thing that has fucking happened. Like, yes. It has been, they have somehow managed to make the Corbyn administration look competent.
Yeah.
Which is incredible because the Corbyn administration was so disorganized. Like they had good politics, but they were so bad at handling the media. They were so bad at anything administrative.
Well, and they were also being undermined from within.
Yet somehow Starmer has like...
They were also being undermined from within the party, right? So, and now Starmer doesn't have that. They don't have that element of they're trying to be sabotaged by people in the party. They've got the party on board and they're still struggling to like be coherent and struggling to, you know, seem competent, which was the whole fucking idea of it.
Yeah, and they would have you believe that they are being undermined from within, basically because people on the left, many of whom aren't even members of the Labour Party, refuse to say that they love Keir Starmer. And so despite the centrists now, despite now being in control of the party and essentially having got everything they wanted, are of course still crying and shitting themselves because like still nobody thinks that they're cool. And of course they're losing horribly to Tories.
Yeah.
And this is like an amazing thing where sort of no one is willing to learn any of the lessons of like, let alone the last 5 years, but like the last 25 years. Like you've got this huge problem in Britain where like there's been a massive demographic shift basically since the 70s where all the people that used to vote Labour don't vote Labour anymore because most of them are fucking landlords. And they're Tories now because Thatcher sold off all the council housing stock to the people that lived in it and basically turned all those people into fucking Tories.
Yeah.
And so Labour needs to find a new constituency of people, which is overwhelmingly like young people, ethnic minorities, immigrants, like a broad coalition of kind of economically disadvantaged people and people disadvantaged by other things such as racism, etc., to kind of form a new way of getting into government. But the Labour Party, or at least the centrists, are very obsessed with winning back a bunch of people who are never going to vote for them, which is mostly like kind of in Britain, we have a very weird perception of class where it's entirely based on kind of how like mask you are. Like being working class just means you have an accent and like football or something.
Well, or there's this weird kind of dichotomy I've noticed as well, where it's like, people that are like, if you're like a urban gig economy employee that's educated, you're the elite, but someone that's like working class in the countryside who earns like 80,000 per year is like working class. But if you're this precarious young person living in London, then you're some kind of cultural elite. They've kind of flipped the script in this way.
Yeah. In Britain, we really resent people who have read a book. If you have read a book, you are not welcome in this country.
That's troubling.
That is being fancy. You're not allowed. And what's most of all not allowed, what's really weird is there's this kind of weird coalition between reasonably ordinary people, but who are Tories and who think that they hate posh people, and posh people who they naturally defer to because they are posh. What they really hate is like a kind of ordinary person who's read a book. That really annoys them. But an actual guy who went to Eton or whatever, they're like, well, he's just me natural governor, isn't he? We've got to respect him. And so it's pretty bad. But yeah, no, the running bit I do on the podcast is like a guy in Essex who, owns like 3 houses and 2 white Range Rovers, and the number plates say like working and class on them. That is the most classic thing. It's like, well, I'm working class because I talk like this. And the fact that I have a portfolio of rental properties, that's what I do as work.
Yeah. And going to the pub and all those kind of working class signifiers. And also what you're talking about in terms of like the Labour Party and the people who kind of backed Starmer and the people who were opposed to Corbyn. What's something that I always also find very funny about these people? These are the people that also split off to form that short-lived Change UK faction. But they're always talking about like, we need to try something different. We need something new and fresh. We need to change and evolve into something new. And everything that they're always talking about is like that. What that means in practice is like, let's go back to what we were doing in 2003. And without changing anything other than that. And that's what they mean by like evolving and changing and doing trying this new thing and being different. It's like, let's just literally just go back to what we were doing 20 years ago, which is, as you pointed out, has had diminishing returns electorally for a long time until eventually it was whittled down to nothing.
Well, yeah, and this is another thing, is that people in the Labour Party are very obsessed with doing things for the benefit of like basically newspaper columnists.
Yeah.
Who they assume are the same as the electorate. Like this was true throughout the Corbyn era, was like basically people on the Labour right kept citing the fact that like various media figures didn't like Corbyn as evidence that Corbyn was unpopular. And like, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Corbyn was like incredibly popular, but he was reasonably popular, at least with like a lot of the Labour Party base. Like he was definitely not popular with kind of like, I guess, centrist floating voter types, if you like.
Yeah. Well, also it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because he would have been similar. It's also a self-fulfilling prophecy because he would have been much more popular had he not had this entire media establishment devoted from day one to destroying his entire career. So it's kind of like, can you believe this bloke's not popular? But it's like, well, it's because it's your whole job to ensure that he's not popular and that people think that he's this like terrorist-loving, racist weirdo. That might have something to do with it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because you've got someone called like Prunella Money War Crimes who writes at The Guardian, who's like, well, the trouble is with the Corbynista left, they're so radical and they want too many genders, and what we need is a sort of sensible centrist leader. And then everyone in the Labour Party is like, this is what the general public think, and it's like, no, they don't. I think actually turf shit is a worthwhile digression, because I think that a lot of Americans and probably North Americans generally probably look on Britain as kind of nuts over like the amount of turf shit.
Yes, we do.
And they would be right. But also, I think an important thing to note about the British turf shit is that it's almost invariably like 8 people. It's just that they all have newspaper columns.
Yeah.
So like it's
or
bad,
wrote the Harry Potter
actually,
books.
It's not, most people in Britain just do not. Yeah, they just do not care at all. Like it's very funny that like the really like the right wing people they hate the TERFs because the TERFs are like really annoying feminists. Like you cannot like the TERFs are like even less popular with like right-wing voters than like Corbynites are, because they signify like the absolute, it's like a weird handshake meme between the right and the left. It's just like hating the TERFs because they're so annoying. Like trying to, because they're like, oh, you know, try and explain trans rights to people on the doorstep in fucking Bolsover or some like kind of like right-wing-ish Brexit voting town. And it's like, well, you just don't have to. You can just go and campaign on other issues while having trans rights as a thing that you also care about if you think it's not going to go down well. But also, like, try going there and explaining TERF shit.
Yeah, sure.
Like, they are not going to be interested in some fucking TERF talking point. Like, yeah. It's fucking insane. But that is kind of indicative of the Labour Party at the moment is trying to hedge everything. And Keir Starmer is like deeply Alan Partridge in his approach to this stuff, where, I mean, again, a recurring bit we do on the podcast is that Keir Starmer always like yes ands the Prime Minister. He never disagrees with the Prime Minister. It's always like, I welcome what the Prime Minister has said. I think it's a good step, and I would call on him to go further. And like always then ask for something incredibly pathetic.
Yeah.
Like, could we have a small tax credit for nurses, which is redeemable as a Starbucks gift card? I think that would resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. So explain what else has happened over this weekend, because so you had this initial election on Thursday, which was a complete fucking disaster. So something that's been interesting is that there's all this like weird kind of personal rumors about Starmer, and that's been going on since then, which has made it even more funny. But also something interesting that's happened is the Labour Party actually won a couple of interesting victories, which no one's even talking about really. Like I don't believe Starmer at this point, it's Monday, I don't know if he's like mentioned these like victories that the Labour Party won in this abysmal election. So can you just fill us in on like what happened over the weekend with this, and like how like the depths of this meltdown, how it seems like we're only barely scratching the surface of it?
Yeah, so if you want real detail on this, you can tune in to there's an episode of Trash You coming out this week where we do a real deep dive on this shit. And as ever, Riley did lots of actual research, but I can give you a kind of précis version.
Yeah, of course. You don't need to be like the stats guy or whatever.
There was also the Yeah, exactly. Welcome to Inside Baseball, the Labour Party.
Yeah, we don't need to go that far.
So we had these elections on Thursday. Yeah. And it was all on one day, but there were several different elections going on. So we had local council elections all around the country. So that's just kind of local, basically city government people who decide like bin collections and stuff like that. Bin collections also the thing that is most important to people in Britain. My God, could you get people to support fucking ISIS if they thought they would collect the bins well? You've got the London mayoral election, which is kind of, I mean, it's still just a normal sort of city government thing, but like that's a big flagship thing that both parties want to win because like London is the capital, etc.
Sure. Yeah.
But the mayor doesn't really do that much. It's a bit of a, they do some things, but like that election was actually an interesting sidebar because loads of just fruitcakes and loons were running in it on platforms of doing things which the London mayor can't do. Like Lawrence Fox, who some people might be familiar with, was running as a kind of trigger the libs candidate, as was this really nuts American podcaster who lives in Britain called Brian Rose. Both of whom were running on these like bizarre platforms of like ending cancel culture and stuff. And it's like, you're applying to be mayor of London. Like you're going to be in charge of the fucking bins. Like, are you going to cancel the bins? Like that's all people care about.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Sadiq Khan, who was the Labour mayor, he stayed mayor of London. Labour ate shit almost everywhere else in the local council elections. There was also a by-election in Hartlepool for the Westminster MP for Hartlepool. So that's an actual like national government person, because I think the MP there resigned or something like that. Anyway, where Labour also ate shit massively. That was a Labour seat and is now a Tory seat. But the places where Labour have gained or held seats in councils are the most notable example is Preston. There are a couple of others, and these are basically all councils which are kind of controlled by what you could call more or less Corbynite wing of the party, where they've done a lot of left-wing social stuff in the towns, like invested a lot of money in local services and kind of improved the lives of the people who live there, and have campaigned on very concrete local issues stuff, which is sort of the opposite of what Starmer was doing. In the Hartlepool by-election, they had a local kind of primary selection within the Labour Party. They selected a left-wing candidate, and then Starmer parachuted in, said, no, we're not having that candidate, and brought in a candidate from London who'd lost an election in 2019, who was like a Remain candidate, and the seat had voted Leave. And basically Brexit is like still the main, even though it's now done, it is still the main anime.
The vibes remain
in British politics. Everyone's losing their minds about Brexit. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the point being that essentially the only places where Labour really did well were in places where the Starmer kind of administration had nothing to do with it, and it was people doing like kind of old-fashioned activism type stuff in those seats. But also, I mean, you can't lay this all at Starmer's door, because like the Labour Party in general are just extremely, like, even if he'd done everything right, I suspect that they still would have eaten shit, because the Tories are just so popular. Like, no matter what they do, people continue to be like, yeah, actually, I like being shit on. Can you do it more, please?
Okay, so what you're describing too, this is a really troubling trend I've noticed throughout this pandemic, when there's been a number of conservative governments, like across, not just in the UK with Johnson, who has done like an objectively terrible job mismanaging this pandemic and getting thousands of people killed. You've seen plenty of examples in this in Canada as well. Doug Ford and a bunch of these conservative premiers here, places in the United States as well. And like, not only are these people not being punished electorally for it, but people are like, yeah, sure, great, good job. We like this, actually, good. And kind of doubling down and supporting these people even more. And it's well, this is kind of a troubling sign of things to come with the way that the climate is changing and these kind of coming crises. It's like, you'd kind of hope that these things would maybe radicalize people in a certain direction, or point out the ways that this kind of way of doing things is wrong and bad. But people are like learning literally the opposite lesson. And it's just like, this is like kind of making me a little anxious about some of this stuff.
It's pretty incredible. But then I was reading a stat just today that in the last 100 years, the Tories have been in government for 80 of them. And Britain is like, it's such a small C conservative country where I can tell you, I personally know a lot of people who have sort of like notionally left-wing politics, in the sense that they believe that like the NHS is good. They believe that like, benefits for people in hard times are good, that kind of. They in principle agree with all that stuff, but they absolutely buy into the Tory rhetoric that basically we can't afford it, and we can afford it even less when Labour are in power because they're so irresponsible. And it's only like it's only the responsible Tories who can like economize enough to like give us a little taste of the good stuff that we used to have. And so you get a lot of this, like, it's kind of deeply sort of like worm brain shit, where just you do believe the good things are good, but you also believe that we can't have them. We can only like have a little treat occasionally if we're a very good boy. There's definitely like that comes into it a lot. I think also like Blair particularly really fucking torpedoed the reputation of the Labour Party. Like, it's now not credible either as a party of the left or the center, really. Like, I mean, there was a lot of anecdotal stuff about this when people were campaigning for Corbyn, that a lot of times they'd go around door knocking and people would come out with them with these furious rants about Blair. And they'll be like, he's not been the leader of the Labour Party for like, what, 14 years?
We're very specifically not doing that.
But it's like the Iraq War and yeah, exactly. And Labour had so long in power with huge majorities where they had opportunities to like really lay the groundwork to improve people's lives. And what they mostly did was like private finance initiatives. And did, kind of like Bill Clinton shit.
Well, it's amazing the correlation between what was happening in the US and the UK, how it's had that same result. In many ways, it's like you see these same arguments kind of carrying out across the pond in these different parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, although another thing that was really fascinating to me was that there were a bunch of people who worked on Obama's re-election campaign. I think it might have his first election campaign in 2008, who then
worked for Theresa May,
and worked on David Cameron's election campaign in 2010.
Okay, and the Cameron thing.
Yeah.
What was that fucking guy's name?
It was either Cameron or May, yeah.
I'm trying to remember the name of that dipshit Obama advisor who was helping Theresa May in 2017 and had that disastrous result, and had a couple of very funny "this you" tweets after the election where he was like, "Oh no, there's no chance," and it's and I'm trying to remember the name of this guy though. It's his name is escaping me. The Obama advisor that advised Theresa May. Someone will probably come up with it in the chat. Messina, yeah, Jim Messina. That's it, Jim Messina. Yeah, absolute dipshit, huge dipshit. That Jim Messina. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's funny. You see the ties between the Conservative Party and
yeah, but yeah, I mean the Overton window is farther to the left in the UK, but it's so conservative. It's very hard to shift it.
But I mean that was okay. So that's part of the fundamental argument, though, of like what's the Labour Party supposed to do to appeal to people with this legacy of like Tory dominance. You have the people within the party that are like, well, we need to be more like Tories but slightly nicer. Or the Corbyn strategy of like, we need to offer something completely different and reach out to different people and young people, especially, and marginalized people, and offer an actual alternative. And that's why I think you saw the result in 2017, where there actually was that one incident where they were able to reverse that trend over the last couple of decades. And why you're seeing that result now, that they've gone back to the strategy of just trying to appeal to Tory voters, basically, who are just like, why the fuck would I vote for you when I can just vote for the Tories to begin with?
Yeah. Well, Riley made a good point about this on TF, where he said that basically, if you do politics as market research, which is essentially what Starmer does, like they love focus groups, they're always focus grouping. You basically end up coming up with right-wing policies, because right-wing policies are what are being campaigned for more effectively. So I think their problem is that they're basically looking at the electorate as a sort of fait accompli, where like, oh, okay, well, what they want is more racism, so I guess that's what we'll have to give them, rather than looking at it as a political question of like, okay, how do we engage people with the ideas that actually we think are good? But they lack the imagination for that. And I think lack of imagination is a real running disease in British politics. And I think the Tories lack a lot of imagination as well. And in some ways, the reason why Boris Johnson has been so successful is that the one thing he does not lack is imagination. I mean, that MF be imagining stuff. Like, it's not always good, but like, he will just come out and say like, yo, what if we built a bridge from Manchester to Northern Ireland? And like, people are like, yeah, sure, why not?
You know what we should do at the height of this pandemic is pay people to go to restaurants and eat in enclosed spaces and encourage that. I think we should try this. What about this? Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I think that, in as much as, I don't agree with Boris Johnson or his politics, he is in some ways a bit of a refreshing force in British politics, because at the very least, he has that, like, he thinks that the government can do things, like not necessarily good things, but even when he was mayor of London, I remember there were a load of people arguing about whether like Heathrow should get a third runway or whether Gatwick should get a third runway. And he was going like, well, every other airport that has anywhere near this capacity has 4 runways. Like, why don't we just build a new hub airport like in the Thames estuary? Like, fuck it. Both these airports, they're too in urban areas to be expanded. Let's just build a new airport, just start from scratch. And everyone was like losing their minds about it. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's the kind of infrastructure projects that you have to do if you want to like, but in Britain, we just refuse to do them. In Britain, like, no, we can only ever like patch over stuff. We can't like, all of our offshore wind farms are like owned by the fucking Danish government for some reason, because nothing can ever be built by Britain. It just it cannot be done.
I see.
We love like just paying rent forever, because
you've already achieved perfection. So if you're building on top of that, you're admitting that what you've already done isn't completely perfect. And since it's Britain and it's the British Empire and the sun never sets on the British Empire and all that stuff, we can't admit that. That would be admitting that it was somehow not good enough in some way.
Exactly. But then at the same time, you have like certain social goods that are so baked in that they're very hard for the Tories. It's so politically popular that you cannot openly oppose it. And the Tories, they try and undermine it, and they little things here. They try and privatize the odd service all, but like they can't really come out and say, no, we think the NHS is bad, in the way that the Democrats can come out and say Medicare for all is a pipe dream, because people have gotten so used to the NHS and they like it. So you have these weird kind of, the general trend is so conservative, but you also have these sort of baked in anchor things that like very hard to get rid of, which proves how
important it is to fight for universal programs for that exact reason, because they become these politically important institutions that people love and want to keep. So that's why going in that route when you're doing politics is a better route than doing this kind of means tested half measures kind of shit that neoliberals like those in the Labour Party or the Democratic Party or the Liberal Party here in Canada like to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to keep you too much longer, Milo.
Starmer is like apparently, yeah.
Okay, so you can continue. So we got a little delay.
Drama is that he's been doing these cabinet reshuffles, shadow cabinet reshuffles, where he's been moving everyone around. Supposedly, he tried to fire Angela Rayner, who was kind of his number two, but has failed. And now she's actually been promoted. And now Starmer is trying to deny that he ever tried to fire her in the first place.
Yeah.
Similarly, allegedly, Keir Starmer has been having an affair with like one of his advisors. Yeah.
Rumor has it.
And so allegedly he might also be getting a divorce, which would be the most fucking Alan Partridge thing to happen. I feel kind of sorry for him, you know. He's just like it's so
been a rough couple of days.
Good. He just can't get anything right. It's spectacular. Yeah.
It is funny. I mean, you have to. It's funny, but it's like, yeah, it's one of those things that you're kind of laughing because you feel some measure of sympathy, even if you don't agree for him. I have to ask, Milo, before you go, I know I appreciate you taking the time to come on. I know you got a lot going on. I have to ask though, like one thing that's kind of interesting over like to think about the UK over the next decade or so, like is the UK even going to continue to exist in its current form? Like it kind of seems like the UK from the outside perspective kind of seems like it's on the verge of some kind of like balkanization or just like complete collapse. That's kind of a fascinating thing to think about. Like, what do you make about that? And what's it like living in the epicenter of that kind of uncertainty?
Okay, I'll do my best to run down the various different scenarios that we've got going on. So Northern Ireland, I think that is going to become part of Ireland at some point. Probably not very quickly, because like there will be some political opposition to that in the UK, and I think there might even be a little bit of political opposition to it in Ireland. But I think that's basically gonna happen. That would seem to be the case. Because I think it's become sort of basically a political necessity at this point. Like I don't know. The demographic shift in Northern Ireland seems to be being towards being in favor of being part of a united Ireland. So I think that's going to happen. I think also that it makes sense for that to happen. I don't really think, there's much point being opposed to that. Welsh independence, complete joke, never going to happen. Scottish independence, complete joke, but might happen. Like it's an incredibly manifestly bad idea, but it might happen because the UK is being so incompetent. If they do become independent, I wish them the best of luck becoming a sort of turf run rump state. So that will be fun for them. That someone in the chat brought up the Northern Independence Party. Do not get me started on the Northern Independence Party. I swear to God, some people started that party just to give me a fucking aneurysm. Like, it's as though someone was just like, how can we make this look stupid this week? Oh, I know. Someone is saying Scotland must be independent. It's not a bad idea at all. No, it's a very bad idea. I'm sorry to tell you. It's going to be really bad.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's like sometimes it's hard to it's hard to like look. It's hard to look at the reality on the ground, what the material effects of that would mean for people, just because you kind of have that inclination to see the UK kind of like collapse in on of itself, and it's kind of satisfying in a way. And it's hard. That kind of obscures the material ways that would probably affect many people probably negatively, like you're pointing out, but it's still hard not to kind of like part of you want to kind of root for that to happen.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that there's this whole thing where kind of people are that, again, because Britain is so like class cucked and people are so obsessed with signifiers of class rather than material realities of class. There's this whole thing like, and I think this is kind of what the Northern Independence Party plays off, basically, is like this idea that like, well, up north, everyone's working class and we've all got flat cap and whippet, and then bloody posh Londoners are all telling us what to do. And no, like London is like the most working class city in the country. Like there are far more people living below the poverty line in London than almost anywhere else in the country. Like it's just absurd. Like that, and there's plenty of like hugely Tory areas in the north. There's plenty of very wealthy areas in the north. There's also lots of deprivation in the north, which needs addressing.
Sure.
And like there is an issue with, I think, Britain's economy being London centric, but like you can never resolve that. It's the same problem with Scottish independence. Like Scotland fundamentally has no money. And like it is like you're not going to resolve that by making it independent. Like, I mean, we would all like the UK and Scotland by extension to have more left-wing government, but like you're never gonna like the idea that an independent Scotland would be especially left-wing when 30% of people, hell or high water in Scotland, vote Tory, and the SNP are actually not very left-wing, is kind of absurd.
Yeah.
Money, there's a limit to kind of how much socialism you can do. And it just in general, my bias is very much towards like what you want to do is build broader coalitions and try and like build broader networks of solidarity. And nationalism, despite always playing into first of all, it always plays into like bad right-wing tropes, and B, like prevents people from building these broader coalitions. I felt exactly the same way about Brexit. Like, I feel like it behoves you as a socialist not to, there were nuts Lexit people, but I think they were nuts for the very simple reason that like, leaving the EU was a huge victory for the right, and pretending otherwise just indicated that you have no grasp on reality. Yeah. And B, like, it behoves you as a socialist to see this big organization as something you can take control of and use to do socialism, rather than something which you should leave it very neoliberal, and then it will fuck you over when you try and have a socialist government.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, I think I appreciate your perspective on this. It's hard not to kind of like look at the ongoing meltdown in the UK, considering the legacy of the British Empire and then what's been going on there, and not kind of like laugh at it a little bit. Like if the same thing happened in Canada, I would probably feel the same way. Like this sucks, but it is funny. It is funny. Exactly. Well, Milo, thanks for coming on the stream and talking about this stuff. It was a pleasure.
I have to acknowledge.
Oh yeah, acknowledge, please.
My pleasure. If I can plug, I have a show that I'm doing in London on the 30th of May, which I imagine not many people on this stream live in London, but it is also being broadcast online. So if you like watching things online, such as the Rob Russo show,
I do. Yeah.
You can get a ticket to my stand-up show. Exactly. Yeah. And so you can tune in and watch it live at 8 p.m. British time on Sunday the 30th. There's like ticket links on my Twitter if you want to check that out. Cool.
Well, thanks again, Milo. It was a pleasure to connect with you on this. I've been spamming the Trash Future link in the chat.
Anytime.
Yeah, everyone listen to Trash Future. Wonderful podcast. Wonderful gang.
Yeah, please do.
I was saying before, I mean, during the Corbyn years, when the media was such a crazy fucking meltdown, it was really like a bright spot to be able to listen to Trash Future, and through your banging your head against the wall of the constant insanity, it was cathartic to listen to hear your takes on everything through week by week. So everyone check out Trash Future. Thanks again, Milo. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that we're passing on our brain disease.
Yes.
Catch you soon, guys. Cheers.
Share the brainworms with everyone. Take it easy, Milo. Bye bye.
Oh, we love to share those brainworms. Take it easy. Catch you later.
Oh boy, Milo Edwards, everybody. Thank you very much to Milo. That was fun, right? Wasn't that fun? Wasn't that fun to talk to Milo? Can you drop Milo's Twitter? Yes, I will. I'll do that right now. Probably now that I'm realizing I probably should have had bots doing this.